We're continuing now our discussion of the various strategies which are popularized in the 1920s. Okay, one strategy is what's called atmospheric advertising. And this is a variety of the soft sell approach, where you use images and a sparse amount of words in order to convey real prestige and this kind of atmospheric sense of greatness, right? So this is an example of one of those atmospheric approaches for the Steinway pianos, and you guys are probably familiar with Steinway. These continue to be, you know, the famous, most expensive, luxurious kind of grand pianos. And so here in this ad it says Steinway, the instrument of the immortals. And it looks as if God himself is like shining through the windows onto this guy as he's playing the piano, right? It's like a heavenly instrument, the instrument of the immortals. So this is an example of atmospheric advertising. The copy here says, "There has been but one supreme piano in the history of music. In the days of Liszt and Wagner, of Rubinstein and Berlioz, the preeminence of the Steinway was as unquestioned as it is today. It stood then as it stands now, the chosen instrument of the masters," right? The inevitable preference wherever great music is understood and esteemed. So this is all about this greatness, right? So atmospheric advertising, where it's about prestige and quality, not so much what it actually does for you. So what you see with these different strategies is that the reason why technique with its logical component really works best for those small, sort of inexpensive things that people have to buy all the time. But if you got these products that are much bigger, more expensive, that you don't really need, quote unquote, on a day-to-day basis, the soft sell approach works better because it builds those kind of abstract reasons why you want to get something versus the logical reasons why you need them, right? So why you need a Steinway piano, for example, or why you may need some luxurious car. So at any time, you know, there's a variety of advertising strategies which coexist. And the way things kind of shake out is the reason why approach is for the small, inexpensive items, and the more bigger, larger ones tend to use a more soft sell approach. Now, I start this slide with a question mark after soft sell because I think in a way, you know, there's nothing soft about this advertisement. It's actually trying really hard to get you to buy the piano, right? Even if it's not relying ultimately on logic. In comparison, fairly, this is a soft sell. But I think it's important to look at this and think, you know, soft sell doesn't mean you're not trying, right? There's a lot of trying going on here. Okay, now I want to show you some different car ads. So these are a variety of car ads that are going to let us see the kind of progression in what takes place when you have this invention that so radically transforms our culture, and then it gets sold in a variety of ways as time goes on. So this furthest image on the left is of the new Rambler, and you can see as far as advertisements goes, this is extremely bare bones. It's just listing, you know, the kind of motor it has, the kind of ignition it has. It's all these concrete characteristics of the car itself. And so you can imagine, you know, when there first existed cars, like this is what you would do is tell people about the cars, what's in it, right? What it's made up of. It's simple in that way and yet also very informative. As we move on here, a few years later, this is a Ford, and actually the price has gone from $2,500 to $850 for this car, so that's great. But this is very different, you know. This is an ad where the emphasis is on the overall look of the ad itself. It looks like something you'd hang up on your wall almost, like a kind of certificate, right? And it does tell us the price of the car, and then there's a lot of text talking about this car and, you know, what's great about it and how useful it is. Still focused on the car itself and what's so good about it and how durable it is and so forth, even though the look is also important. Now, on the far right, excuse me, is something different from the 20s. And so what we see here is that we've gone beyond the car itself to what we'll call added value, which is, what is the car going to give you? What are you going to be able to do once you have this thing? And here we see it says, companion of her holidays. And they're not talking about the dog or the little boy, it's the car. The car is the companion of her holidays. So this ad is suggesting this woman drives a car, and she gets to go and visit, I don't know, her friend or her sister, whoever this is, right? And the text doesn't tell us about the car, it tells us about her. Anticipation of a joyous, carefree vacation are abundantly realized when a Ford closed car provides easy access to town or country. So, yes, does it talk a little bit about the car? Of course it does. But it's not telling us what's so great about the car itself. It's what's so great about the life you'll be able to lead once you have this car. So here's another example. Again, think about this stuff also in terms of gender representation and how different this is from this earlier era of the woman being in the home and taking care of the house. This ad is about freedom. Freedom for the woman who owns a Ford. And look at the car and the placement of the car. It's in the background. It's kind of actually disappearing back there. It's there, but it's not what's most important. What's most important is the way this woman feels, wearing her pants, having driven her car. And the text here says to own a Ford car is to be free, to venture into new and sunny places, right? So this is what we talk about as added value, particularly with these big, expensive products. What are you going to get besides the product itself? Right? That's what added value means. So car ads increasingly are going to suggest that you're going to get elegance, you're going to get style, as well as the pleasures of being able to go, wherever you want with this car. These are the things you get when you get a car. These are the other reasons why that aren't maybe as logical, but these are added value, right? So here, being a woman is about being free, being modern, being able to go out and experience the world, and the cars are going to give you that ability. All right, some very different on the other side of things. If we go and shift back to those everyday cheaper products that rely more on the reason why, there's creativity there as well. So one of the things that we see really being popularized through the 20s, and then especially we'll see it more in the 30s, is what's called constructive discontent. Constructive discontent means that you create some kind of discontent on the part of the viewer, the consumer, that they didn't realize they were unhappy about before, that there's something wrong with them that they didn't recognize, right? And then your product is going to cure them of that discontent. In other words, you're going to get rid of that cognitive dissonance that's been created by the ad and try to get yourself back to the equilibrium you had once before. These ads are great examples of this. So these are ads for Listerine mouthwash, right? And so on the top left, even without reading this stuff, I bet you can guess from the look on this little girl's face and the woman's face what's going on here. The headline says, "If you want to know the truth." And what it's all about is that people don't know that they have bad breath. But if a little kid's sitting in your lap and you've got bad breath, you're going to hear about it, right? So this is constructive discontent. You didn't know that you needed Listerine mouthwash, but you do. You have bad breath and just no one's told you yet. The other ad follows up in the same way, although they add the term halitosis, which is this clinical term for bad breath that became very popular because of people like Listerine advertising. And so in this case, it's explaining why this girl is unpopular and no guy wants to talk to her. It's because she has bad breath, so she should get Listerine. I've also thrown in here this, I don't know, it seems crazy to me, but this existed, Listerine cigarettes. All right, the idea here that you can smoke these cigarettes and your breath won't be as bad because they're soaked in Listerine, apparently. I can't recommend those. Even without trying them, I would reckon that they're probably not that good. Okay, so I just want to sum up now some of the very different strategies we've talked about so that when you guys look at ads and do your ad analyses, you can think back, okay, here's the variety of tools that we have to describe them and think about what makes them work. So in terms of design, that is what they look like visually and what kind of copy is used, what the copy looks like. We talked about the difference between the hard sell versus the soft sell. The hard sell that's focused on lots of reasons, lots of facts, what the product consists of, what it's going to do for you, versus a soft sell which relies on more creating associations, favorable associations with the brand. We talked about look versus sales argument versus brand name. Those ads that emphasize the integration of art and text and the name versus those that really just emphasize making an argument in text about why people need a product. versus those that are really just emphasizing the brand name over and over and over again, telling us this is the name, this is the name, this is the name. Okay? We talked about the incorporation of different styles of art and how at some points that's been more important and more prevalent, as well as shifts that go on in graphic design. Your book is great for this as well, and different kinds of copy too. Sometimes copy is much more dramatic. It's about addressing the viewer individually or telling a story, and other times it might be almost scientific and resorting to arguments about health and so forth. In terms of the content of what's going on, how all these things come together in order to form that connection that we call an appeal to the audience. Right? We talked about emotional appeals and logical appeals. Emotional appeals relying upon the sense of well-being that we're going to get from the product versus the logical appeals of what it's going to do, how it's going to solve a problem for us. Right? And in both those cases, we ought to think about how they're culturally specific. What does that mean? Well, that means at different places, at different times, those appeals are going to be different. The kinds of emotions that you can rely upon, right, or even the logical arguments that you can make. For example, the idea of the crowds in the city where there is untold germs and so forth. Those are going to be different at different points in time and different places. So here is an ad I'll just talk about really quickly, again for soap, and it says, "Would your husband marry you again?" In a lot of ways it brings various things together. The image is it's a social tableau. It's one of an upper class couple, right? He's wearing a tuxedo. So it's that aspirational lifestyle, but then it's also cognitive dissonance or constructive discontent, as advertising calls it. Would your husband marry you again? You might think you're in a happy marriage, but are you truly? Have you really aged so much that your husband wouldn't do it again? Right? And then there is still emphasis, of course, on the name of the product, Palmolive, and it's prominent there, as well as the price. And this all fits together, and on the right we have this picture of Egyptian woman, and this is part of the consistent look that they would use in all their ads. A couple more quick ads. I said I would show you one that was an example of the emphasis just on the brand name. So these are going to be two different ads for Kotex, and there are feminine hygiene products. So Kotex, a suggestion, buy Kotex before leaving the store. And this, as you can see, is a black and white ad except for the boxes of Kotex, which are blue. Ask for them by name. No embarrassment. The words sanitary pads do not even appear on the box. Only the name, Kotex. Kotex is undoubtedly on one of the counters within your site or only a few steps at most, right? So they're suggesting how women can buy these things and not be embarrassed about it. They don't even have to say this. Instead, they can say their brand name, right? So this is like doing double duty. It's creating these as a specific product with a brand name that you can identify with, and it's also offering to solve your problem of being, nervous or buying these things. And then here's another one from a little bit later. This ends the worries of old-time hygienic methods. So this one instead is providing us this picture, which is a little unclear. If you look closely, it's a woman at a theater. It's not clear whether she's on stage or in the audience, really, but she's certainly out there in public and proud to be the center of attention, right? And this ad is relying more on this notion of being modern and removed from the past. It still has a logical component to it. As you can see, it's got these different images about easy disposal. It shows the actual box, but it's not just telling us its name over and over and over again. So you can look at this ad, you can think about how the art works together, how the copy, which in this case it even suggests it's written by a registered nurse, works in conjunctions with these other things that we see in arguments that are going to be made, all together to provide a variety of appeals to the consumer to purchase a product.